When I married Chris, I thought my life would be full of love and happiness. At first, everything was perfect. We laughed, shared dreams, and planned a future together. But slowly, things changed. Chris started making decisions without asking me. One day, he told me to quit my job and stay home. "I'll take care of everything," he said. I trusted him and agreed. But soon, I felt like I had no control over my own life. Something felt wrong. I ignored the signs at first, but deep inside, I knew my happy marriage was starting to fall apart. Chris was not the same man I fell in love with. He became impatient, always in a bad mood. If I asked him anything, he got angry. "You don't understand how hard I work," he yelled when I asked why he came home late. His words hurt me, but I stayed silent. I didn't want to fight. Then he started ignoring me. Some nights, he wouldn't come home at all. My heart ached. Was I doing something wrong? Or was Chris hiding something from me? I had to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. One morning, Chris said he was too sick to go to work. I believed him and told him to rest. But later that day, I went out for groceries and saw him leaving the house, looking perfectly fine. My heart raced. If he was sick, why was he going out? I decided to follow him. My hands shook as I watched him walk into a casino. My worst fears came true. Chris was gambling. Our money, our future, was slipping away because of his addiction. I felt betrayed. How long had he been lying to me? That night, I confronted him. "I know you went to the casino," I said, showing him the photos I had taken. He froze, then laughed. "So what? I need a break from this boring life." His words stabbed me like a knife. "You're wasting our savings!" I shouted. He rolled his eyes. "If you were better with money, I wouldn't have to." My hands clenched into fists. He didn't feel guilty at all. I realized then, Chris would never change. But I wasn't ready to leave just yet. If he wanted to play dirty, I would too. A few days later, Chris dropped another bombshell. "We're building a house for my parents. They're moving in." My breath caught. "What? Where will we get the money?" He smirked. "Our savings, of course." I felt sick. He was using our future for his parents without even asking me. "You can't decide this alone," I argued. His face darkened. "I'm the man of this house. If you don't like it, then leave." My heart pounded. He thought he had full control over me. He had no idea I was already planning my escape. Chris thought I was weak, but he was wrong. I started preparing quietly. I gathered proof of his gambling, his lies, and his financial mess. Then I called my former boss. "Do you still have a job for me?" I asked. He was happy to welcome me back. A wave of relief washed over me. I was taking back control of my life. That night, Chris went out again, thinking I would just stay home and obey. He had no idea I was setting the stage for his downfall. Soon, he would regret underestimating me. Chris invited his parents over, telling me to treat them well. I played along, acting like the perfect wife. When they asked about our money, I stayed calm and said, "Chris lost most of it gambling." His mother gasped. His father's face turned red with anger. "That's not true!" Chris shouted as he walked in. I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos of him at the casino. Silence filled the room. Chris looked trapped. His parents, who always supported him, now saw the truth. The perfect image he had built was about to collapse. Chris tried to deny everything, but his parents weren't fools. "You've been lying to us?" his father asked. His mother shook her head in disappointment. "I won't live with a liar," she snapped. The irony made me smile. Chris thought he controlled everything, but now he had nothing. I stood up, took a deep breath and said, "I want a divorce." Chris's face went pale. "You can't be serious." But I was. I had planned everything. This was my way out. "You'll regret this," he whispered. I met his gaze and smiled. "No, Chris. You will." The divorce wasn't easy, but I didn't back down. Chris lost everything: his wife, his money, and even his parents' support. I walked away with my savings intact, my head held high. It wasn't easy to start over, but I did. My boss welcomed me back with open arms, and I moved into my own apartment. I had spent years trying to fix a man who never deserved me. Now, I was free. And freedom felt incredible. A few weeks later, I heard Chris was struggling. His parents had kicked him out and his gambling debts piled up. Then he called me. "Please, I have nothing left," he begged. My heart felt nothing. "That's not my problem," I said and hung up. I didn't owe him anything. He had destroyed his own life. I refused to feel guilty. He had made his choices. Now he had to live with them. A few days after my divorce was finalized, my boss called me. "Would you like to work in the office again?" he asked. My heart skipped a beat. Yes, I'd love to. Returning to my old job felt like regaining a part of myself that I had lost. Walking into the office, I was greeted with warm smiles. My colleagues were happy to see me again. For the first time in years, I felt important. I was no longer just someone's wife. I was independent, earning my own money and shaping my future. It was the fresh start I needed. As the days passed, I found myself reflecting on everything I had been through. If I had stayed with Chris, I would still be living in fear, constantly trying to avoid his anger. But now, I was free. I realized I didn't miss him at all. I didn't miss the arguments, the loneliness, or the feeling of being controlled. I had made the right choice by leaving. For the first time in a long time, I woke up each morning without anxiety. My heart was light, and my future was bright. I was stronger than I ever imagined. One night, as I was about to sleep, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Chris. "I've changed. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a moment before laughing softly. He was the same manipulative person, thinking he could lure me back with empty words. I had no desire to hear his excuses. Without hesitation, I deleted the message. Chris was part of my past, and I had no reason to look back. I had moved on, and I wasn't going to let him ruin my new life. Some doors, once closed, should never be reopened. One weekend, I found myself sitting in a small cafe, sipping coffee while watching people pass by. The sunlight streamed through the window, warming my face. I smiled to myself. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. No more stress, no more waiting up at night, no more worrying about someone else's bad decisions. I was in control of my own happiness. I had faced heartbreak and betrayal, but I survived. And now I was living the life I had always deserved. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And that was enough. As I walked home that evening, I thought about how much I had changed. The woman I was a year ago wouldn't have had the strength to walk away. She would have kept trying to fix a man who didn't want to be fixed. But now, I was different. I had learned to put myself first. I had learned that love should never come at the cost of my own happiness. Freedom was a beautiful thing. I had taken back my life, and no one would ever take that from me again. I was finally, truly free. Standing on my balcony, I looked up at the sky, feeling the cool evening breeze. My journey had been painful, but it had led me to this moment, a moment of clarity, strength, and hope. I no longer feared the future. I embraced it. I was free to dream, to explore, to live without fear. Chris was just a memory, a lesson learned. My story didn't end with heartbreak. It ended with victory. I smiled, knowing that my best days were still ahead. No longer trapped in a toxic past, I was finally ready to start the next chapter of my life.